The introduction to the song is extremely atmospheric, super cinematic, super ambient-like, and it sounds perfect for the introduction to a Pink Floyd album. Hello there, girls and boys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're coming back to Chinese Democracy, an album that I think is extremely underrated and deserves more praise than it gets. And today we're gonna be reacting to the opener to the album, known as, of course, Chinese Democracy. A song that you will see, has plenty of things that paves the way for the entirety of the album to be the way it is. So, if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. But before we go, if this is the first time on this channel, I welcome you, because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, using language that anybody can understand, in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and of course, our appreciation for music. If that's your jam, let's rock and roll. So here we go, girls and boys. Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses. Okay, I'm gonna be super honest with you, girls and boys. It sounds quite at the beginning. The introduction to the song is extremely atmospheric, super cinematic, super ambient-like, and it sounds perfect for the introduction to a Pink Floyd album. Not a Guns N' Roses album, in my opinion, girls and boys. It truly took me by surprise when I got this record, and this being the opener for the entire album. It's meant to be the song that sets the mood. And I can see why many people got or never liked the album as much as they should, in my humble opinion as well. Because it's extremely foreign. It's clearly sounding like it's not even Guns N' Roses. Later on you see, and this section, this final section, when the song actually catches up and the chorus hits, it feels like Guns N' Roses, 100%. But the introduction, and particularly when the electric guitar joins, even the tone itself is so different from the usual Guns N' Roses sound. It sounds like it's full of fuzz. What's fuzz? Fuzz is a different type of distortion that it's applied to a guitar, and it could be used on many other instruments, okay? Right now, for example, I'm using the fuzz on my voice, and you can see that the effect that it has is it's adding plenty of distortion to the sound source, but also it's kind of unruly and kind of hairy, for a lack of a better term. It's a tone that is much more popular on different genres, but Guns N' Roses has never been that kind of sound, right? Particularly if you're coming from Use Your Illusion. But then the guitar kicks in with the drums, and it gets very Guns N' Roses like. Once the full band joins, I gotta say that the moment on which Axel vocals joined was excellent. That was very good, extremely very good, and it added a lot of presence to the track. I happened to have the chance to see them perform this song live, and I gotta say that it's fantastic. Live is a completely different beast, and I was one of the guys that, as soon as I listened to this track, I felt that I didn't like Guns N' Roses anymore. I was stupidly wrong, of course, because the more chances I gave this album, the more I discovered out of every single one of the songs, and the more value I found on the record. The song itself, you will see that it's a very good song, but these kind of quirky elements at the beginning of the track are very Chinese democracy like. Pay attention to the rest of the song, and you're gonna see more of those quirkiness, that more of that quirkiness, and more of those elements that are kind of foreign to the traditional Guns N' Roses sound. And to be very frank, and this is one of the hot takes of this video, I think this was the natural evolution for the band. Why do I say that? Or why do I say that? Well, it's several years after the release of the previous record when this album got released. Axel, at this point, is the only member of the band that was officially part of Guns N' Roses, and the sound of the band has to evolve with the musicians themselves. If they were still playing the same music that they were when they released Appetite for Destruction, for example, it could be dull and boring. But again, it's my own opinion. So this is an open conversation, so tell me what you think about that. Let's continue. Here we go.
It don't really matter, guess I keep it to myself. Said it don't really matter, it's time I look around for somebody else. 'Cause it would take a lot more time than you have got for masturbation. Even with your iron fist, all that you got, rule the nation, and all we got is prejudice time. All that you got to rule the nation, when all I got is prejudice time. It don't really matter, I guess you'll find out for yourself. No, it don't really matter, so you can't hear it now from somebody else.
Sorry for interrupting, girls and boys, but it's time to analyze the mix. And before we take a look at the screen, the guitar solos were excellent, right? And super different from the traditional Guns N' Roses sound. Please tell me the names of the guitar players for this song in particular, because for those of you who don't know, this album has like a bazillion of different musicians because of the scope and the production itself. Well, Axel hired everybody and their mothers to be part of the album, and it's basically some of the best in the business on every freaking instrument, and it shows. So please remind me who's playing the guitar parts, because I could tell that there were at least two guitar players sharing the solos due to the style. And one thing, there was the use of a particular effect known as whammy, and a whammy it changes the pitch of the signal coming through on the spot, like this, blah 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 blah. Blah. You saw, right? It's doing the up and down, and you saw the use of that effect during the solo when it was going upwards, and it's something that Slash never did. Okay, so this is the kind of quirkiness and the kind of elements that I was referring to at the beginning of this analysis that sets these records apart. Now, coming back to the screen. Welcome back to Decibel, the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. Over here we got the first element of our analyzer, which is the frequency range analyzer. And in here you can see that we got the representation of the 20 Hertz and 20,000 Hertz, which is the highest and lowest, or lowest and highest, respectively speaking, frequencies that we can hear as human beings. And not surprising at all, being Chinese democracy, being a really super loud and extremely polished sounding album, and having analyzed a few tracks already from this album in the channel, I'm not surprised to see a gigantic, insane amount of low end. This is almost electronic music levels. No joke, for real. This is very, very punchy. It's not necessarily normal to see on a rock record, but this is the interesting part. Whenever I hit this stage, sometimes I try to make the mention the fact that depending on how the curvature on the analyzer is, you can even tell the origin of or when does the album comes from, because normally speaking, older records from the 80s and even backwards, they tend to have less presence on the low end. And in contrast, and it's due to the development of technology or something, okay? And in contrast, stuff from the late 90s and early 2000s, and this album being from 2007, if I recall correctly, you see this gigantic and energetic and bombastic sounding low end. That's where you can hear the difference of the different eras in production. When you do this as often as I do, because this is just my normal way of analyzing music, this is what I do for a living. So you see this quite often, not this particular shape, but you start to see that depending on the period on which the record was produced, you start to see similarities. Those are the aesthetics of the time, but also it's due to the amount of technology available to them. Another thing, this album is coming from the period known as the Loudest War. And that means that back in the day, people, the music producers and the music industry in general, were so into the idea of producing the loudest record possible, because according to the marketing people, the louder the record, the bigger the sales. And actually, they are right, because we have a particular way to understand sound. Which involves the loudness and how much it's perceived by us human beings as interesting or exciting or engaging. Speaking of which, it's time to hit the second section of the analyzer, because it's basically exactly this. This section over here, girls and boys, it's known as the dynamic range analyzer, and what I just described to you is known as dynamic range. Dynamic range stands for the difference between the loudest point in volume with the highest point in volume on a given track. And in here, this analyzer is showing us, through the use of this blue blob, the different points in volume throughout the entirety of the song. And this is the introduction to the track. You can see that this is super, super quiet. I don't know if you remember, but I was actually going to my volume controller over here on my converter, because I didn't remember this track to be that low at the beginning. And progressively speaking, you can see that the song kept the same level of intensity, but then BAM! This is when the guitar kicks in. The and then the development, and here is where we got the introduction to the vocals, and the full band kicks in. And see the gigantic bump in volume. This is insane. And we will keep going all the way down to the next section of the track. Look. What used to be the highest point is now normalcy for this one, and it reached even higher levels of intensity here. Why? You use those when producing music, and for those of you who are familiar with this channel, you might already have an idea of what I'm about to say, but for those of you who are new, what you do when producing music, the use of volume, it's quite important, because you can actually create a much intense or a much more dynamically speaking intense section of the track just by pushing the faders, the volume controllers on the mixing board, higher. because the louder section is, as I stated at the beginning, the more emotion it's gonna be felt by the audience. It's a trick. It's not something that actually happens, or it's basically just the mixing engineer, playing tricks on the brains of his audience. As horrible as it sounds, that's what it's going on. But it's important because what we're doing when producing music and mixing music is trying to get as close as possible. We're trying to get the audience as close as possible to the experience of being in front of Guns N' Roses performing. And why would you rise up the volume during this section, the choruses? It's because the chorus is the point on which the song delivers the biggest amount of energy. I was about to say information, but it's not necessarily that. It's when it delivers the biggest load of energy to the audience. And it's a sing-along part, if you wish. And live, you will see the band performing with a higher level of intensity. You're gonna be interacting with Axl, which happens to be a great frontman, by the way. But how can you translate that through speakers? It's impossible. So the only way to do it is by playing those tricks. It's important to have that in mind, Girls and Boys, because by understanding this principle, if you listen to your music using these tools that I'm providing you with, you're going to enjoy it even more, because you're going to start to see how clever the production was, because it's not just the songwriting behind the success of a song when it comes to recorded material, of course. There is an artistry behind the production and mixing of an album, and that's my whole point with this. Okay, let's finish this off because this song is badass and it's actually quite short. Let's do it. So there you have it, Girls and Boys. What do you think? As I stated before, this song is a great, and I can see why they select it as the opener for the album. It's a very good introduction to the sound of the band at that stage, and also to the... Well, you can see that there are elements that are quite new to Guns N' Roses. The first one is the overabundance, because even at the ending you could see that they used the cinematic stuff. This more, how can I put it, atmospheric. That's why I made the joke about this sounding like a Pink Floyd record, because that's something that you would hear more often on a prog rock record than a hard rock one. One thing, I'm not saying that Guns N' Roses is unable for writing epic in scope music. You got November Rain and all of those sort of songs are quite expansive in nature from previous records. But even though they were dramatic, they didn't, at least from the sound design perspective, they didn't have those extra elements, such as the introduction that you find in this album. It's very atmospheric, and it's something new to the sound of Guns N' Roses. While we were playing, I was looking at the analyzer and I wanted to add a little bit more information regarding the mix. Let me take you back. You can see here, Girls and Boys, that it's very intense, as I mentioned before, but this is the mid-range and getting close to the high range. And it's interesting to me, at least, that this is actually, it felt a little bit harsh, not harsh in the sense of it being poorly produced. This is a magnificently mixed and recorded album, okay? Don't get me wrong. It was just that at that point, but particularly at the very end, the song became so loud that I kinda got tired of this section, of this area of the mid-range, getting to the high mids. And yes, it's in between the 3000 hertz and 4500 hertz. That's where the core of the sound of the electric guitars and the cymbals tends to be. And that part at the very ending, let me take you once again to the analyzer. We're gonna hit the frequency range. This guy over here, this section, the very ending, you can see that there is a slight bump here. This point was a little bit annoying to my ears. But once again, nothing changed. The mix is excellent. But the track became that loud at that point that it became annoying. Just for a fraction of time. But let me know what you think. It's interesting to me because in previous analysis to the album, I never found this record to be, even though it's loud, it's not the loudest this era of music production had to offer. But this is the first time that I feel that they jumped the shark a little bit. But what do you think? This is an open conversation again, and please let me know the name of the guitar players once again, because there were several points on which the guitar was rocking it, doing all sorts of fantastic licks, and I gotta praise the use of the guitar here, and not just on the side of the guitar player who was the one performing, but also the direction, because Axel, I would say that in this record he shows his fantastic skill when it comes to leading a band and organizing and producing music, because all of the different elements that were part at the very end, it was loaded with information. And even though the vocals were at the center, you got guitars doing all sorts of fantastic stuff, and you could hear every single note. That's due to the beautiful mix, but also to the proper and fantastic arrangement. All of the instruments and all of the parts that those instruments are playing make sense and are not fighting for space and your attention at the same time. Excellent. So kudos to Axel and the people behind the production, because it was excellent. So please remind me the name of the guitar players, girls and boys, and if you like to support this channel and if you want to keep rocking with me to Chinese democracy, well, make sure to subscribe. And also, if you like to support this channel further, you can listen to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also by following us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. Now, girls and boys, the only thing left to be said is never let anybody tell you what to dream about. Remember, I will see you when I see you.